Okay, so welcome guys in today's session. And the students, today we are about to study how a web server works in the Spring Boot. Okay, so basically, whenever you are going to any website and you try to access the content of that website, at the time you have to log into that website. After logging in that website, you can see the content which you can consume. But behind that, how the things are going on, that today we are about to discuss. So let us suppose you are a client. Anyone who is sending the request, who is trying to access the resource is a client. Let us suppose you are a client and you are trying to access a resource. So you are a client and you are trying to access a resource. So you will create one HTTP request and it will go to Tomcat. Tomcat is what? It is a web server which is used to handle your request. Whatever request you will send, that is the HTTP request. What is HTTP? HTTP is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is the type of the protocol. By using that, we are sending a request from browser to the server. Now, when it reaches to the server, now it's server duty to map that request to a proper dispatcher servlet. Okay, so now this web server maps your request to the dispatcher servlet. Okay. And in DispatcherServlet, we have routers which route our request to a correct controller. So what is the use of the DispatcherServlet? DispatcherServlet is nothing, but it is something which decides the destination of the request, where the request should go. It routes the request where it has to be go. Now, DispatcherServlet route the request and it internally do two object it creates. One is HTTP servlet request and one is HTTP servlet response. In the request, HTTP servlet request, we have the request object, whatever client is sending to us. And you will ask, sir, why again we have the HTTP servlet response? See, guys, this HTTP servlet response is with us because when we have to send the response back again to the client, then we will be using this response object. As I have already told you, in dispatcher servlet, we have handler mapping tool, and it is used to delegate the requests of the type. Let us suppose you are sending the get request from the client side. So your request should be correctly mapped to the get handler with the correct mapping. So that handling has been done by the dispatcher servlet or the handler mapper. Now, once it reaches to the handler mapper and handler mapper maps that request correctly to the methods. So that method's controller got invoked. What is this controller? Your question might be, sir, what is this controller? See, controller as the name suggests, controller is nothing but it controls the request. Whatever is coming via Tomcat server, via dispatcher servlet by using the handler mapping and it reaches to the controller. Now it has to route the that request. What has to be done by that request? Let us suppose if the request is get request. So controller has to decide that this request want to fetch some data from us. But if the request type is post, post means now this request wants to create a resource inside our server in our database. If the request type is delete, mapping is delete. It means client want to delete some resource from our database or from our server. Are you getting my point? And in the controller side also, we are doing the validation. Let us suppose you are passing when you are trying to register in a registration form, name, email ID, and blah blah blah. So all those things have been validated somewhere. So that validation we can do in the controller part, where we have multiple annotations. By using that, we can check the validation authentication. And after doing that, we send our request to the service. Now you will ask, now here the part of the MVC architecture starts. Anyway, I was telling you the how web server work, but I will tell you a little bit about the services. So in the service, how does it work? Service is nothing which is used to serve your request. Whatever controller is sending, it will do some internal working, it will do some validation, it will do some logics inside that, it will do some filtration. Whatever is required, that part, business logic is written in the service. Now service cannot directly access the database. For that, we create repository layer. What is the repository layer? Now it comes under the MVC, model view architecture, model view controller architecture part. But now service cannot directly fetch the data from the database, so it will call the repository. A repository layer. Inside that, we create our repository, JPA repository, CRUD repository, multiple repositories are there. As per our requirements, we use that repository, and by using that repository, we have some methods that we can use to fetch the data from the database. And by using that data, by using service layers, business logics, we are now ready with a result. Now that result again we have to show the client. So for that we have HTTP message converter and this HTTP servlet response object. So whatever response we got from the service, we will bind that into our response and we will send it back to the client. And here we are doing JSON serialization and deserialization. In Spring Boot, normally the serialization of the JSON and the deserialization of the JSON is done by the Jackson. Okay, so I will just show you a basic how we can create controllers.